Hey there, this is Luke, and for the month of August, we are bringing you some of our best episodes since we launched the podcast, and today's episode is an interview with Joel Norris of Franklin Road Baptist Church. You know, a lot of churches struggle with meeting their creative needs, whether it be design, website, video related, and Franklin Road has recently started outsourcing all of their creative needs, actually here to the Must Increase team, and we just take a moment in this interview to talk about the advantages of that and how churches can make that adjustment and how really they can experience a higher quality in their media and creative needs by outsourcing. So enjoy this episode with Joel Norris.
It's what you really save on just the whole element of staffing. Most churches are not going to be able to afford the salary of a full-time graphic designer.
Welcome to the Must Increase podcast, where our mission is to increase His name through your church. And I am Luke Clayton, your host. And of course, I'm here with the man himself, Bo Snyder. Hey there, Bo. How's it going?
Good, Luke. Good to be here for episode 4.
Yes, the 4th episode and the first episode of our new format, if you will. This is the 2nd episode in February, and if you're just now joining in, that really doesn't mean much to you, but if you've been listening to us for any length of time, this is the first time we are doing a second official episode in a month, and that is our new format moving forward, at least for the immediate future. And so we're excited that you have joined us for this episode, and today our topic of the podcast is talking about your church's media, which I know is kind of what we're always talking about, but specifically, in what circumstances and in what situations do you need to consider outsourcing to a professional? By outsourcing, we're talking about hiring a freelancer, like hiring a outside designer, someone who does not work in-house or on your actual staff or team. And of course, that's the business we're in. And so we offer services where we do that. But there's a lot of guys out there doing this, a lot of guys and girls doing freelance design services, or they're freelance videographers, and they are a very relevant need that churches have. And we work with churches all the time that are in desperate need of help with their media. And so that's kind of, we've heard a lot of feedback. We've seen a couple things that this is a topic people want us to discuss. And so, Bo, we have been doing this for a little while now, where we've been working with churches. They've been outsourcing to us. And in our experience, maybe you'll disagree with me here, but there really is no let's bust a few myths, I guess I should say. The myth number one is that it's not affordable, or that it's cheaper to keep your design work or video work or whether with an in-house staff member. Okay?
Yeah, I'd say we got to bust that myth. Yeah. That is not true.
Well, here's the mindset that goes into it. Someone says, well, I'm already paying, let's say, for example, I've hired this guy, we'll just call him Joe. I've hired Joe to be my youth pastor and my music pastor. That's a common combination out there.
Yep, okay? Very common.
They handle youth and music and worship and whatnot. And then you say, though, well, Joe's a young fella. Okay, Joe has an iPhone. Joe has a MacBook.
He must know everything about media related.
He must be a genius when it comes to design and videography. And
in my experience, because we've both been on staff at a school, at a church, and when you say the word media around almost anyone, they think you do everything from designing graphics to hooking up printers to, hey, can you build me a new Wi-Fi? So it's like, no, you don't understand. So this is a very wide thing we're talking about here.
There are a lot of tools out there that enable guys like a Joe to to put out some really great media content.
Sure.
And and really honestly, we found there's a time and a place where it's okay to have your in-house staff like that handle, smaller media. For example, managing your social media. We don't really do that for other churches.
That is a prime example of something that should be handled in-house.
Yeah, and there's professional, social media firms out there that you can hire, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't consult with them or something, but for the most part, hey, for example, I can't come into your church and be there on a Sunday, take pictures and post them to Instagram. So that's where having an in-house guy, a guy like Joe, to hey, you take pictures, you take them, you put them on social media. That's great, but there are especially these big Sundays and these big events that your church hosts that, man, it's a lot for you to tell Joe to oversee, make sure you've got all the music ready, make sure you've got all the youth programs ready. Oh, and by the way, Joe, you also have to get all of the graphics ready, and we want a video, and, we update our website, and that gets overwhelming.
Joe is drowning at this point.
Yes, Joe.
And Joe knows who he is out there. He's like, yes, that's
Joe's
me.
Like, that's me. That's me. Yeah. And so this is an all too common scenario that we run into. So that's myth number one. Myth number one is that just because I have somebody that I've hired, that it's going to be cheaper for me to let them handle it. And here's why the financial part of that is a myth. Think about the time it takes for someone, an average Joe, to make a design or to produce a video, because they have very limited experience. Now, the more they do it, yes, the more experience, the quicker it goes. But for the most part, they've not done much of it. So what they will spend literally days trying to make can take a professional hours. And I've seen that to be true so many times. That's even true on our team here.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to Bo, but Bo is not our design guy. He's our video guy.
I'm not a design guy.
He's a great videographer, great editor, does awesome in that field. But we've got another guy, Marcus, who is our design guy. And Marcus, man, he can crank out designs like, man, I mean, it's like super quick. It's amazing how fast he can.
I can spend all day. I was doing this yesterday. I can spend all day coming up with a design for social media or whatever it is. It takes me, all morning. And Luke, he's too kind to say this, but he can look at me and go, yeah, I could have done that in like 15 minutes. But he's too kind-hearted to say that. So that is a perfect example of what we're talking about.
So even in our field of like, hey, we are the media guys. Like, we've even got our specialties. We've got our things that we focus in on. Like I said, when it comes to video, and people are shocked when I make this confession, I'm not a good videographer. I'm not good with a camera. But that's okay. There's other things that I do. I consider myself a decent writer, and as far as a storyteller when it comes to producing the films that we make. But I'm not much of a videographer, and that's why we've got someone like Bo here. So even in, we're a media business, we've got guys that it's like, I would never assign Bo to do a design. But likewise, I would never tell myself that I'm the one responsible for videography, because those are not our strengths. And the same thing trickles down into your church and carries over to your church. And so with Joe, you may say, well, yeah, he can do it. He's physically capable of producing something, but it's going to take him a lot of time, and you're probably going to sacrifice quality. And you got to think about, what is Joe good at? If Joe's good at stuff, like I said, when it comes to the music and songs and so forth and the worship experience or whatever, let him focus on what he's good at. Because when you say, well, I'm already paying him, I'll have him, make this video, do this design. Well, now Joe just lost countless hours that he could really be using to do what he's good at. And so that's, like I said, so it's really not saving you money. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's costing you more money, because now the hours that you were paying him that he could have been using to do what you primarily hired him to do, he's spending on stuff that's not his specialty. And so that is the first myth. The second myth, I would say, is that outsourcing in and of itself is expensive. And I will say, sometimes that's true. There are freelancers out there. There are designers. I'm thinking of a few that I know, and they're really good at what they do. And yeah, they're cost effective. In fact, there's one guy I know of that if you want a logo, if you want he's like, that's what his specialty is logos. If you want a logo from him, you better have a minimum budget of $1,000. Now that's a pretty pricey logo from at first glance. Now I believe that a logo does carry a great value, and that's really not that bad of a price, but it's a sticker shock, But in most cases, you can find someone who's good at what they do and who also is affordable at an affordable rate. And once again, what you got to consider is that you outsourcing that project to whatever it may be, design or video, to the professional, you just freed up your Joe to do what he's good at. We're working with a church right now that they've talked to us about using our services, and they've said, we are tired of having our staff guys do all of this media because we want them to focus on ministry. And that, I think if pastors and church leaders had that heart more, you would see just a huge improvement in the way your church operates.
And Joel Norris, who our interview is with today, he is big on outsourcing, and he's been doing it for his church for a couple years now.
Yeah,
and he's really happy with it. He thinks it's a great idea, to an extent, in the right situation. So
yeah. Now I do have to give a disclaimer. They outsource to us, so I'm going to let you know. That is, and there's actually, I don't know how much of the backstory we'll include here in this interview, but this is actually where I used to work. I used to be full-time media director at Franklin Road, and then I got my start with Must Increase Media right after that. And so that is, like I said, I do want to give that disclaimer but this has been how I have discovered and how Joel has discovered that outsourcing is a great option for your church. Any size church, and the church, Franklin Road Baptist Church, they're a pretty good sized church, and to where they could justify having the budget for a full-time media director. And like I said, they've gone that route in the past, but they've been outsourcing to us now exclusively for about 2.5 years. And now, look, I'll be honest, and we're gonna discuss some of it in this interview. There's pros and cons. There's things that you have to consider if you're going to outsource. Your workflow of things has to change. You can't expect certain things to be done in certain ways. You have to change your mindset and your philosophy a little bit. And Joel talks about that a little bit. So I did want to give that disclaimer that yes, Joel is also a good friend. So Joel's a good friend, and they are a great customer, great client. We love working with Joel and the church there. But we do have some great insight that we've learned over the years that we discuss here in this interview. So let's get to our interview with Joel Norris. So Joel, you here at Franklin Road, which is my home church, by the way, shout out. You guys have been outsourcing, and disclaimer to Must Increase Media for
full disclosure.
Being fully transparent for, I don't know how many years, probably 2.5.
2.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Almost 3 actually. We're coming up on 3 years here pretty soon. With that in mind, obviously it was a huge shift when you went for it. And we probably won't get into a ton of the backstory, but I mean, most people know that I was actually employed at Franklin Road. That was my job, was the media director. I was the in-house media guy. And then I transitioned to start Must Increase. And, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, I'd been doing it for so long that you guys just kind of kept me on contract. And originally it was supposed to be short term, and now it's kind of turned into more of a long term, which is great for us, great for business for us.
Yeah, this experiment has lasted a little longer than what we thought, but
so
it works out good.
It does. But there were some changes as far as with mindset and just with workflow. And I wanted to kind of talk about that. And obviously some of it may come across as a limitation, if you will, to some people, but I think overall it's worked great, and there's some benefits to it. So kind of walk us through that transition, some of that transitional process, and some of the things you've had to kind of change, not just for you yourself, but also with the staff and so forth, and making it work.
Yeah. So just to kind of provide some background for the listener as you're kind of thinking through your own personal ministry or business or corporation or whatever, we were pretty robust on the media side of things. Mm-hmm. We had obviously had a full-time graphic designer. We have a church and a school here that produces a lot of content. We, at one point, even had an on-site printing press and could do a lot of our stuff in-house. And so back in 2016, I believe, when Luke was kind of beginning to transition out, we kind of had to totally rethink all of that. So we went from basically doing everything in-house on property with a full-time staff person here that was just right down the hall that you could go and ask for stuff, to streamlining ourselves and really having to change our whole media philosophy. And so some of the limitations are just that you don't have the opportunity to go and just spring something on someone, which we were kind of the stereotypical church or ministry to where it was like, hey, this is a good idea. Let's go tell the media guy about it and see what he's able to crank.
And remember, I was that media guy. Yeah. So, I remember that happening.
See what he's able to crank out in the next 6 hours. And so we were doing videos. We were doing print jobs. And so the philosophy kind of actually started to change when we moved printing off-site. We just found that we could get a much better deal. We weren't having to maintenance our own printer. We weren't having to pay, obviously, the charges for it. We even, at one point, had someone kind of overseeing that printer. And so we kind of phased some other equipment out, and began to outsource before Luke even left, and then begin to actually outsource our creative content after he left as well.
And, and kind of speaking to some of the things you were talking about, like, hey, with the, getting these last minute harebrained ideas or whatever. And you're right. A lot of times those work. A lot of times those are great. But a lot of people, they've made that the normal instead of the exception. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's and if you're out there and you're probably in a position as a, church leader, assistant pastor, whatever, you're probably like, oh, well, we wish we could be like so-and-so church because they have it all together. Look, no, there's no church or even business that I know of that fully has it all together. Like, we're obviously not going to name anyone specific, but I was talking to someone at a church that I for years thought was like the most organized, like structured church ever. And they were like, oh, man, we're running behind on this. Like, that's due tomorrow. We don't have that done yet. And it's like, oh, everybody, it happens to everybody, but you do have to put forth an effort,
right?
To actually plan and prepare. And so with that said, though, we were talking about some of the limitations. I mean, we got to talk about some of the positives here because, hey, that's kind of what we do here. So, but seriously, and I know we kind of already said some of the limitations are actually, we turn them, we say, hey, this is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But what are some more positives to outsourcing, in terms of, like, I know I'm asking you the question, but this is something that maybe will get us into, you giving more to this answer. I know for sure that it most cases it helps churches with their budget. Like, it's more affordable.
Money probably speaks the loudest.
Yeah.
The truth is that any pastor or ministry leader that's really worth their salt are going to be concerned about the bottom line. And as ministry leaders and pastors, you're stewards of what God has given you. And if you're not paying attention to kind of where you're spending your budget and your finances, it can kind of slip up on you. And for us, I mean, step one in this thing was really downsizing what we can print here locally. If you're not outsourcing what you print, whether you're outsourcing your creative content or not, it's just, in today's digital world, it is too easy to outsource what you can print on site for really half the price. When I hand people some of our tracks that Must Increase is designed, they look at them, they're like, "Oh, these are sharp." Well, we order those. I think our last order was 20,000. We order those and they're a nice glossy track, and people look at them and like, to print that locally, like in your hometown, or even to print it locally on site, you're probably going to be 3-4 times the cost of if you send it through a different resource thing. Obviously, you might not get it the next day, but you can send it out. And so people are amazed the price difference of stuff when you simply just plan ahead and outsource. And so I think money's one of the biggest positives. I think also, if you're looking at kind of from the financial savings in, it's not just what you save on printing, it's what you really save on just the whole element of staffing. Most churches are not going to be able to afford the salary of a full-time graphic designer, even a generous love offering to maybe someone who steps in and helps them. That's going to expend some churches pretty easily. And when, like, we step back and look at it, what we pay Luke to not have to provide him for a salary. We don't cover his insurance. Obviously, by paying him, we cover those things, but we don't have to cover a lot of those little odd ends that come with just having a body on site. We don't have to give him a desk. We don't have to give him a laptop. We don't have to give him all, like, just little things. I mean, we're even saving money on sticky notes, like with not having someone around. And so those are like some of the intangibles that you don't always think about, but it is, at the end of the day, it's a savings. And so that would be the first positive that kind of stands out in my mind, is that it's a financial savings. And then I think really another positive is it gives you the opportunity to have quality content from someone that's kind of a professional in the field. A lot of times we assume that if someone knows how to turn on a computer or run Photoshop or whatever, that automatically equals that they are this awesome graphic designer. And the truth is that's just not true. There are things that are visually appealing to everybody, and most graphic designers are going to understand that. And so you get quality, a better quality, I would even argue, for a much cheaper price overall.
We're going to come right back to the rest of our conversation here in just a bit, but I wanted to take a moment to let you know about a new resource we are excited to release for churches, and that is our free fall media bundle. Believe it or not, the fall outreach season is all but here, and this is a big opportunity for your church to reach out to your community. A lot of people use the fall, kind of the beginning of school year for a lot of people, with colleges and even high school and elementary students, and even for parents. It's almost a reset time of the year, and so a lot of people will be looking for churches, looking for a church home, and so you have the potential to have a lot of new people in your church during the fall season, and that's why we made the fall media bundle. And like I said, you can get yours for free. It includes screen graphics, social media graphics, and we have a lot more options as well. Outreach materials, bulletin covers for your church, all kinds of stuff that you can get as part of this fall media bundle. So be sure to head over to fallmediabundle.com to get yours. That's fallmediabundle.com. Head over there and download your free fall media bundle today.
The printing itself, just the cost of having that printer in the building, like the thing that a lot of people don't understand about when they go and they like maybe rent a printer or whatever through a company, which is what we do here for our church. What people don't understand is, like, before you ever even hit print on a job, you are paying for that that to be there. And so you multiply that by 12 months. I mean, it was pretty close to a full-time salary. And so to kind of phase that out, like, basically, what I guess, to kind of just to put it bluntly, what we pay Luke now and then what we pay in actual printed materials and content development is actually less than just having that printer on site.
Yeah.
We're saving money. We're doing more than we've ever done before. We have better quality than we've ever had before. And we don't even have something on site that's doing it. And so when you really think about that, like, and that's not even counting the fact that we're saving money by not having a body in the building. We're not having insurance. We don't have to provide resources. That's just like what we're paying for is what we're getting. Like, our media budget is dedicated to what we're actually getting and seeing used in our ministry and seeing used all around our property and city.
And this is something you alluded to earlier, but we haven't mentioned yet. Franklin Road Baptist Church, if you know anything about it, is not a small church. Like, we're not talking about, and I will say most of the churches that we work with are what I'd call a mid-sized church. They're 300-400 people. And most of the time you think, well, that makes sense for them to outsource. But Franklin Road, I mean, without boasting numbers, I will say numbers, but not too for the purpose of boasting, but 1,200 on a Sunday. 1,200 on a Sunday is about average. That is the size church that most people would automatically think, well, we're just going to get someone in-house to do this. but they found benefit in outsourcing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, once again, I know it seems kind of, hey, like I said, I was trying to be fully transparent up front. We are the ones they outsource.
I'm not getting paid for this.
No, Joel's not getting paid for this. So he's just doing it out of the kindness of his heart. But in all seriousness, we have found benefit, and this is really where it's all started in terms of even a must increase on our end. It's kind of shaped, working with Franklin Road has kind of shaped our business model in deciding how we work with churches and how we market ourselves and so forth. And so it's really been a great experience.
Yeah.
Of good content there from Joel. He's one of my favorite guys to work with. He's always full of good ideas, always has a lot of good insight on these things.
Yep. And great conversation there. So Joel, thanks for talking to us. And so we are so glad that you are listening. If you haven't yet subscribed, be sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That way, when we release a new episode, you will see it right there on your phone or your device or wherever you're listening. It'll get downloaded and you can listen to the latest episode. Also, be on the lookout for bonus episodes. We drop those from time to time, bonus content. Thanks again for joining us. Also, if you want to share, if you're feeling generous, we love it when you share our podcast, when you mention it on your Twitter or Facebook or wherever it may be. Maybe you just know a friend who would benefit from this episode. Feel free to share it with them. And thanks again for joining us here on the Must Increase podcast, where our mission is to increase His name through your church.